This video is to show how I found the idea that the sixth seal of Revelations may refer to Pittsburgh. Here we find the word pitiable at the bottom of this main term, and this main term is April 9th through May 9th, 2013. The 2013 part is at the bottom here. So here we see the word pitiable. In Hebrew, it also means measly, worthless, mean, poor, shabby. But for our purposes, it means pitiable and refers to Pittsburgh. And there it is in red. Here it is again in red. And one more time in red as well. Here in red is the word Berg. So we have pitiable Berg. Here we find at the top bombastic, as perhaps in a bomb. There's the idea that Sandy Hook was the first part of a two-part beginning to the tribulation. And in other codes we've seen the word sand or sandy frequently wrapped around the word pit or something referring to Pittsburgh. Here, once again, we see it as well. We see sand and the red cutting right through pitiable Berg. So there's sand. There's sand again, and a third sand. This sand I'll mark, and this is next to the word bombastic. The word sabotage and saboteur has shown up quite a bit recently in the various Bible codes. And of course, when a term starts to show up with more and more frequency, it suggests something's going to happen with that word. Of course, so here's the word sabotage, two different words for that, and two different words for saboteur, and I'm going to mark them and see what happens. For this term, sabotage, we find it in red, touching the word pitiable, sand, and bombastic. So now we have another word for sabotage, and if you watch this first word for sabotage, what happens, it takes three letters of that word into a different word, but both words mean sabotage. So sabotage is marked twice there. Here we have the word saboteur in red, touching pitiable Berg and pitiable this way on the diagonal. So we have sabotage at the top touching pitiable, and we have saboteur at the bottom. Here we have at the top in the red the second word for saboteur, and we find that it runs through the two other words for sabotage. And this word, saboteur, at the top, also touches onto the word pitiable. Now, we click and we find the word civilize in red, which is right next to the word sand. So we have, as we look at it, pitiable, sabotage, saboteur, sand representing Sandy Hook, civilize representing Civil War, and the word bombastic. Now we find the word Warsaw in red cutting through the middle, and it touches on the word civilize, as in Civil War, and we're going to see Warsaw. we have two words for terror. This one in red touches the word bombastic, and also onto the word of a saboteur, the word terror, but I'm not going to mark that terror. I'm going to mark this terror. Here we have the word train cutting through terror, and the word trainee at the top where it says bombastic. This word train in Hebrew also means like an exercise or a drill. So there could be a terror drill or a terror exercise going on that turns into the real thing. So, because here's train and trainee, but train may also represent a locomotive train. Now here we find in red is the word scheme, and that's coming right across on top of the word civilize, and of course cutting through Warsaw, Civil War, scheme. I'm not going to mark that though. And here is another scheme, word scheme, and it comes right on top of Pitiableburg. So we find two schemes near things about sabotage. As I've said, that Sandy Hook and what happens in Pittsburgh may be the beginning of the tribulation, the start of the tribulation. Here is the word tribulation in red, the only place it shows up in this matrix. And that's the final word I'm going to use for this matrix. And just to recap on what we have here, we have a time period from April 9 to May 9th, 2013. We have Pitiableburg at the bottom with the word saboteur. We have a terror train. We have pitiable here, and we have pitiable over here right next to sabotage and saboteur. Then we have tribulation, sand as in Sandy Hook, civilize, war, saw, with the word bombastic at the very top. So you see Pittsburgh seems to be expressed as some event is going to happen there. And so I took this Pitiableburg and looked up that code. Here we find the word or term Pitiableburg with a marker for my name so that I know that it's referring to this time and place. Usually I'll look at the first word out of a term because all the letters are at different points in the Bible, but I usually go with the first, thinking that might be the most important. And we'll take a look at what this particular one says because we can't see it here. We'll scroll up a little bit and see that it says, a song of mallet of David. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in unity. It is like the precious ointment upon the head that runs down upon the beard, Aaron's beard that runs down to the hem of his garments. So this particular thing says how pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in unity. Well, what happens in Sandy Hook, where now they want to take away guns, and that might cause a civil war. And if something happens in Pittsburgh and is blamed on gun owners or Christians, it may start a war as well. So here is a reference to how good it is to dwell in unity. So here's the term pitiable burg, representing Pittsburgh. And this is pitiable at the bottom here, burg, then representing me. And here we find the word saboteur. Here we find the word tremendous, which can also mean crashing. And here nearby is the word trainee again. So we have tremendous saboteur or crashing saboteur and trainee. Here we find two words for tribulation. Here we find the word sand, representing Sandy Hook. Here we find the word liberty, which is right next to the word trainee, and tremendous saboteur. So perhaps your liberty is at stake. Here we find the word flag, flag on, and flagrant, all words echoing the word flag. And of course this is the word tribulation, and flagrant right next to pitiable burg. The idea being what a flag is, in this context, would be a false flag staged event where a country or rogue elements within a country attack itself so that it can have a war with another country, such as when Hitler staged an attack on the border between Poland and Germany, claiming the Polish had attacked Germany, and that day or the next day millions of troops pour into Poland, and that would be a false flag event. So we see the word flag. Here in red at the top we have the word killing. Here we have the word shooting and shooting again, and these two words for shooting cross through the words for tribulation and touch onto or next to the word sand, as in Sandy Hook. So we have Sandy Hook shooting and tribulation. Now I want you to watch at the top of the term where we have the word flag and killing, because we're going to put the word second in and see where it appears at the top. So we have the word flag, and second runs right over the word killing, as in this is part 2 of a 2-part event, a second false flag killing. Now I'm going to clear this to show other more important stuff, but I just wanted to show you what was there. Now this is the word that made me think that that Pittsburgh relates to the sixth seal, and the term of the word represents the tree of life. And what it says about it, it says either of the 2 wooden handles or rollers to which the parchment scroll of a Sefer Torah is attached following usage among Ashkenazim. So it's either of two wooden handles or rollers attached to a scroll. And that's critically important for the sixth seal. So now we search for where that is. And here we have it dead center of Pittsburgh. Now here's the second most important word that I've been seeing just recently in the codes, and that is seeing the word roll or roller, and in this case rolled up. And rolled up, as you can see, cuts across Pittsburgh and ends up right next to the word representing a roller or a scroll. Rolled up, roller, scroll. And that relates to the sixth seal. Next we have the word Advent. And Advent refers to Jesus returning to pick up the believers in the rapture. It's the second coming. And here we find it cutting right across that scroll and through Pittsburgh, right. Next we find in red is the word shout. Now, since it's right underneath the representation of my name, it could be referring to me trying to get the warning out that so that nothing happens to Pittsburgh. The Bible says God does not want to bring judgment upon the earth. The only reason Jesus comes back is as a rescue mission, because if he doesn't come back, no one will be left alive. So, because apparently mankind is going to destroy himself if he does not come back. Now when Jesus comes at the rapture and descends from the sky, one of the things that happens is they blow a trumpet, but also there's a shout from an angel. So here we see the word shout, and that may be representing the angel, and it crosses right over the word Advent. So now we come to the October 13th, 2011 Jesus warning dream, which was mimicking the fifth seal. And there was a great crowd of a whole bunch of people dressed in white robes facing like a stage, as if you're at a rock concert. And the stage was like inside of a cavern, and I was standing on one edge looking out over the crowd to the other side, and on the other side was Jesus leading a group of people all dressed in white robes, carrying candles. And he was not at the front, he was like 10 to 20% back of it, and he was ascending on a incline. And as I was watching this, the idea was expressed to me as if coming from Jesus. Two things. One was, for every 5,000 Christian martyrs killed, a city shall be destroyed, the first Pittsburgh. And secondly, they will ask you standard against me. Standard, the word standard, can represent a flag. If you read that sentence and put flag instead of standard, it would say, they will ask you, flag against me. Now, that might mean that there would be a false flag event blamed on Christians. And the word standard is also like a combination of two words, stand hard. So they will ask you, stand hard against me, which means to be against Jesus and Christians, as far as I interpret it. And when we look at the fifth seal, it says, when the Lamb broke the fifth seal, I saw underneath the altar the souls of those who had been slain because of the word of God and because of the testimony which they had maintained. And they cried out with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, will you refrain from judging and avenging our blood on those who dwell on the earth? And there was given to each of them a white robe, and they were told that they should rest for a little while longer, until the number of their fellow servants and their brethren who were to be killed, even as they had been, would be completed also. So, my dream is a copy of that scenario. And it said, well, when is judgment going to come? Well, judgment comes when more martyrs are killed. And so, and Jesus is saying in the dream, here's 5,000 martyrs going to be killed. And then he talks about persecution. So, if the dream represents the fifth seal, when he talks about Pittsburgh, that would be a clue that he's talking about what happens next. He's talking about the sixth seal. Now, we just saw the matrix showing for Pittsburgh, which I showed in the matrix before that, how it was involved with Sandy Hook and sabotage and terror. So now, when I did that pitiable, well, all of a sudden we see scrolls being mentioned and scrolls being rolled up. The Pitiableberg matrix is talking about a rolled up scroll. So take that in a conjunction with what Jesus was saying in the fifth seal dream. We see a scroll being referred here. So it says, I looked when he broke the sixth seal, and there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth made of hair, and the whole moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth, as a fig tree casts its unripe figs when shaken by a great wind. The sky was split apart, like a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. Then the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the commanders, and the rich, and the strong, and every slave and free man, hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. And they said to the mountains and to the rocks, Fall on us, and hide us from the presence of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand? In the Bible symbology, mountains and rocks would be representing governments. So when the trouble comes, the people are running to the government saying, Protect me, government. Now, since the idea is that we're dealing with civil war, it says the sky was split apart like a scroll when it is rolled up. Now, usually I think of, if I was going to roll up a scroll, I'd be closing it. But apparently in the old days, if you want to open up a scroll and read it, you roll it up. And it says the sky was split. Now, that suggests cutting, dividing, civil war. And so if we are to say that the sky was split, it may be saying that there was a civil war happening. And when this civil war happens, then the people are asking for the governments to protect them. Now, when referring to the earthquake, there's an earthquake when Jesus dies. And so it says in Matthew 27:50, and Jesus cried out again with a loud voice, a shout, and yielded up his spirit. And behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook, and the rocks were split. The tombs were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised, and coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they entered the holy city and appeared to many. So we have here a shout. We have the veil torn in, veil of the temples torn in two. Now the veil covered the Ark of the way to the Ark of the Covenant. And so in ancient times, when someone died and they were in sorrow or mourning or in grief, they would often tear their shirts in two or their cloaks in two. And so we see the veil is torn in two from top to bottom. It's split. And the earth shook. And it says, and the rocks were split. So here we have the tearing and the earth shaking and the rocks splitting, tombs opening, and the dead were being raised. So here, when the rapture comes, people will the dead and the living will be raised, who are believers in Jesus, if I remember correctly at the moment. And we see in Matthew 28, now after the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to look at the grave, and behold, a severe earthquake had occurred, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled away the stone and sat upon it. So, once again, here's a rock, a stone, and we have rolling away to open something, and that's the tomb. And Jesus comes out, and an earthquake is there. So when we look at that sixth seal, we see the mountains and the rocks, and we see the splitting, and we see the rolling, all associated with an earthquake. So Jesus said in Luke 12:51, do you suppose that I came to grant peace on earth? I tell you no, but rather division. And then Matthew 10:34, do not think that I came to bring peace on the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. So, but of course the sword is his tongue and his voice. And so if it says that there's not peace but division, well, that suggests that there's war if there's not peace, and that division is a part of that war. Now, maybe it refers to the United States having a second civil war. Maybe it refers to the world system. The countries of the earth are not united in peace anymore. They are divided into a third world war, for example. Now, even now, these things could be prevented if people could change their ways. And that's why trying to time the rapture would be very hard, because God has not even necessarily decided when that will be, because if people change, well, then they'll get a delay. But what you see in the codes, if things don't change, it seems like most likely scenarios. Now, I did not ever plan on saying when the rapture is going to come. It's just a series of events have occurred, and in the beginning, it was what I believe some signs to go and cure paralysis, saying that the science suggested that if I used the Bible code, paralysis and spinal injuries could be cured. And then a year after that sign, to the day, it was the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles. That was the first sign in September 2010. Then 1 year later, on the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, or Feast of Booths as they call it, that's when the October 13th dream happened. So even and of all the things that have happened, it seems that things are very close, and so I just put it out there, and I'm documenting it to show people, and that at some point, maybe if something happens, and I'll get taken seriously, and I can help the situation. But if not, it's just something to inform people of what's going on, and I don't expect to carry it on forever. But it's but since the specific signs that were coming about the rapture, they started in around April 25th to the beginning of May, so it's been almost a year, and I can't think that it would go on much more longer than a year, and we'll just have to see what happens. I'd like to be wrong and have peace and prosperity on the earth, but we shall see. So I think that'll be all for now, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.